So now we're going to talk about the visual system. Now we use our eyes to get lots of information about what goes on around us in our environment. And that gives us detail about what is happening, about where we are and what we are doing. So for some children, this can cause lots of problems, especially if they are oversensitive to touch. And usually what we see is these children struggle to cope in busy environments, especially in a classroom. Sometimes they're going to some of the schools and the walls and the ceilings are covered in displays, which for some children is of course great because they really enjoy all of that visual input. But for our oversensitive children or over-responsive children, it's very, very difficult to cope in that environment. They get easily distracted by all the visual input around them. So again, they struggle to focus and pay attention. They get easily overwhelmed because of that. And then what we also find is when they go, let's say, from the classroom outside to play and then come back in afterwards, their eyes just struggle to adjust to the light. So when they're out and about, by the time their eyes have adjusted, then they have to come back in, which is a really sort of uncomfortable experience for them. And when they're out and about, they find it very difficult to identify their friends and find them. And this again links into them struggling to find anything in a competing background. We can imagine if they open a drawer with lots of things in it, they find it very difficult to locate what they need. Again, when they work at the desk or the table, they get easily distracted by lots of things being on the table. It might also be that the lighting of the room can cause problems, especially the fluorescent lights. We find that most schools do have these lights, so some of the children are very sensitive and can get really bothered by that. And they get really visually distracted when it is bright in the class. So what sort of things can we do to help our children that's over-responsive to vision? So firstly, we could try and reduce the visual input. So I often say to staff in school to try and clear maybe one part of the wall so that it's less filled with display, and the child could maybe sit there so that they don't get as distracted. It could also be where their desk needs to be as clutter-free as possible. So only have on the desk what's needed. The pencil, the paper, and nothing else. Some children even benefit from having a workstation or a little pop-up desk screen that would prevent them from being distracted by the visual input around them. At home, some children really like having a dimmer switch on the lights. So as soon as they come in, they can turn the lights down so that it's sort of low lights in the house. But also a lot of children just have a little area at home, a little sensory area where they can go, where the lights are low, maybe a few fairy lights, and they can just go there and calm down and sort of regulate their system a little bit better. We could also try and introduce natural lighting as much as possible where children struggle with the fluorescent lights. So it's really for staff to think about where a child positions themselves in the class. Maybe they need to sit somewhere where they don't have the direct light of the fluorescent light shining into their eyes. Then when we think about our children going outside to play, wearing a hat or sunglasses is an easy solution. Even when you go out and about on day trips, if they have that available, then their eyes can adjust easily when they go in and out wearing the sunglasses or the hat. And I have to say, most schools are really happy to include those sort of strategies for the children to support them as much as they need. Sometimes when we find that our sensitive children don't really like to make full eye contact, it might be that we allow them to use that sort of peripheral vision if that is what they find easier, if they are looking at us. So now we also find that some of our children are under-responsive to vision. So these are the children that really enjoys visual input. So it might be that they would be flapping their hands next to their face. And every time when I do this, I realize how much extra visual input I get. Sometimes they screw up their eyes, or they roll their eyes, or do excessive blinking. Again, all those additional visual slides or visual input stimulates their sort of visual system. It could also be that our children that is under-responsive to vision stand really close to the television or the computer screen because they want to look at the pixels. They even, when they do some handwriting activities, they tend to lean really close forwards, maybe even with their head resting on the table when they are writing, because they want to see the writing up front and as close as possible. So when our children are under-responsive, there are certain things we can do to help support their visual system. So firstly, if we think about the children that always lean forward with their head very close to the desk, it might be that they could use a sloped surface to put on the desk, so that would bring the work a bit more sort of closer to the view. We have to remember that some children also lean forwards when they write because they've got poor core and back strength, and for that they need lots of exercise and activity to strengthen those muscles. And they, of course, also benefit from the slope on the desk. But for our vision children, that can definitely help just to bring it a little bit more into their vision. Now, when the children are under-responsive, we need to provide them with lots of color and lots of contrast. So it might be that on the desk you could put a big red piece of paper and then maybe a smaller yellow one and only then the child's book. And there might be pots with lots of different colored pens and pencils just to make it very engaging and interesting, because the more color, the more the children will respond to that. You could also do lots of activities like playing with spinners or a kaleidoscope, looking through a kaleidoscope, or even looking through books. 1001 Things to Spot or Where's Wally. Any of those sort of activities are really good for our under-responsive children. And then for teachers in school, it might be good to use visual strategies like a rainmaker or a little bell or maybe clapping of the hands to get the children's attention when they want to give them another instruction.